So this week I'm going to give you guys an update on my 25-gallon Discus breeding project. So in this tank I have a red cover female, which is confirmed, and I have a wild blue-faced heckle, which I think is a male, which is unconfirmed right now. But looking at its body, the fins, I believe it is a male. And you can't be 100% sure until they actually lay eggs, fertilize, and actually have wigglers. So I haven't had the success of seeing wigglers yet, so I can't really say it's 100% a male. So ever since I've added this new pair together, I've probably seen maybe 4 or 5 batches of eggs being laid by the female, but again, no success in terms of wiggler. Originally, I did have a pair of red covered discus, and actually the male is in the other tank. I found that every time I would separate them, they would kind of be okay for maybe a few weeks or so, and then the male will start bullying the female for whatever reason. It got to the point where I actually had to separate them several times, and I figured maybe it's the male that's causing it or the female's doing something. And right now, I believe it's probably the red cover male that's the bully. Because ever since I've added this blue face heckle, this male isn't like that at all. They actually get along very well. They swim together. They don't peck at each other. And it just seems like they probably are a perfect fit. So actually, I've noticed something slightly different this time around in terms of the actual laying of the pair. So I didn't actually see the male fertilize the eggs because the eggs had gotten laid, and then by the time I actually noticed the eggs, both of them were already actually, taking care of actually fanning the eggs. On the prior attempts, when I actually was looking at the pair, it was always the female that laid the egg and actually took care of the eggs, and really didn't see any, action from the male at all in terms of like fertilizing it, or even going over there and actually, taking turns fanning it. So this time is a little bit different because I'm actually noticing them act as a pair. So normally when we have an actual pair, one would be always fanning, and the other one will go out to either eat or kind of look, explore to see what's going on, and then they would actually take turns. So I'm actually noticing this on the male side where he's actually fanning the eggs, and then the female will come out looking for food, and then swap roles where the female will be fanning the eggs and then the male will be coming out for food. So I'm actually leaning towards more of like they're actually learning, they're getting some experience together, and possibly eventually get some wigglers. Unfortunately, the next day after shooting this clip, they did end up actually eating their eggs. So we will probably never know if they'll ever hatch. I actually was debating last night to see if I wanted to cover up the eggs just to see if we can get them all the way to wiggler form. Unfortunately, because they did lay on the actual heater, the heater tends to actually kill the eggs. Um, and if they actually laid on the cone that I have in the middle, which they have not in a very long time, I can probably cover that up and see if that is an actual pair or not. But because they chose to lay on the heater, unfortunately, I knew the eggs weren't going to hatch, even if they were. So the next time they do lay eggs and it's actually on the cone, I'm going to go ahead and try to cover it up with a plastic mesh and see if it actually gets to wiggler stage, because if it gets to wiggler stage, we know for sure that that's a male and we actually have a pair. Alright, so let's talk about the tank real quick. I actually had some new stems added to the tank because ever since I've actually taken down the 54-gallon in the living room and converted it to a reef tank, I actually had to move a bunch of those stems somewhere. So I actually moved some of those or most of those stems into this tank along with the other 54-gallon that I have in my office. Also, about a week ago, my pump for this tank actually died. It literally just stopped working, and luckily I found out or actually noticed it. And luckily I did have a spare pump laying around. I did a quick swap. This is a slightly stronger pump. This pump is the Eheim 2000 Plus compact pump, I believe. And the flow rate is amazing. It's like, I think, ideal for this tank setup just because the other pump was slightly underpowered, I would say. I mean, it worked for the setup. I felt like it didn't break the surface as well as this pump here, so I think this pump is going to work amazing for this tank now. So for the lighting, I'm still using the Kesso A160 LED. I really do love this light and the shimmer that it provides for a Planet tank. I know that some people don't like the shimmer, but for some reason, like if you have this light and you have some other lights, It kind of just changes the dynamics and effects of the tank. It just makes the tank, I don't know, like pop or kind of like stand out a little bit more. I do like the other lights where it's just a constant one, color where you don't get that disco light effect. But I don't know, just sometimes when you have like two different lights, it definitely stands out and it's just different and unique, I think. So in the sump, I'm using this area to grow out my Iguzu 2009 sword. And as you can see, the plants are growing amazing. I'm also using a Kesso here, but this is the Kesso 880. It's a slightly smaller tank designed for sumps. And this light is great. It pretty much has the same effect as the Kesso 160 above there. And I can't really complain about the light just because it grows really well. The LED is slightly underpowered for sure. Because the sump area is kind of shorter in terms of height, we don't really need that strong of an LED to penetrate the actual water. But also since I'm growing these swords really don't need that high of a light, but they do well in medium to high light. And the higher the light, obviously they'll do way better, but again, they don't really necessarily need high light. Overall, I'm happy with the tank setup so far. Ideally, I would love to see some wigglers, some fry in action, or having them swim around. That's still my goal, my dream to actually have one day to actually raise a fry all the way from wriggler stage to an adult. But we're slowly going to get there. So let's just cross our fingers and hope for some wigglers. And if you guys aren't subscribed yet, make sure you guys are subscribed. And like always, until next time, guys, peace.